Hi children, once again I welcome you all to our history class. We have been learning about the nationalism in India, and in the last video you have learned about Simon Commission and demand of Purna Swaraj. About these topics in the last video you have learned more about them. And today in this video I would like to tell you about the Salt March and the civil disobedience movement under the same title, Nationalism in India. Okay, dear children, Nationalism in India, Salt March and the civil disobedience movement. Civil disobedience movement, Salt March. Gandhiji believed that salt could be a powerful symbol to unite the whole nation. During the British rule, the British government imposed heavy tax upon common salt. You know, my dear children, very well, salt is an important ingredient of our food item. But unfortunately, the British government did not leave common salt also. They imposed heavy tax upon common salt. And this act of the British had angered the Indians, particularly Mahatma Gandhiji. So then, when the British imposed heavy tax upon these, Gandhiji believed that salt could be a powerful symbol to unite the whole nation. And he got a wonderful opportunity to unite the people over this conflict. That's why Gandhiji strongly believed that salt could be a powerful symbol to unite the whole nation. And he used this opportunity and he started the Salt March. Gandhiji demanded the abolition of salt tax. He made a strong demand about the abolition of salt tax. And Gandhiji started his famous Salt March, and this Salt March is also known as Dandi March. And Gandhiji started this Salt March or Dandi March on 12th March 1930, my dears. And this Dandi March accompanied by 78 volunteers. Mahatma Gandhiji was accompanied by 78 other volunteers. Okay, all these 78 volunteers followed him. Yes, Mahatma Gandhiji. So this Dandi March, as I told you, which was started on 12th March 1930. And actually Dandi is a small a coastal village in Gujarat. So Mahatma Ji started his march from Sabarmati Ashram. And see, here is this picture. You will see Mahatma Gandhi started his march, Salt March. And here in the picture, take a look at this picture. It is the Sabarmati Ashram where Mahatma Ji lived in this ashram. He stayed in this ashram, which is called Sabarmati Ashram in Gujarat. Mahatma Ji stayed in this ashram. So Mahatma Ji started his march from this small, ashram, Sabarmati, and nearly they walked 24 days to cover a distance of 240 miles from Sabarmati to Dandi. Okay, my dear children, nearly they walked 24 days to cover a distance of 240 miles, not kilometers. The distance that was between Sabarmati and Dandi was 240 miles, my dears. So to cover this 240 miles, it took 24 days. So they walked for 24 days to cover a distance of 240 miles from Sabarmati to Dandi. So at last Gandhiji reached Dandi, and then and ceremonially he violated the salt law by manufacturing or making salt by boiling seawater. By boiling the seawater, he violated. First of all, he picked up a handful of salt and then he boiled it. By doing this, he violated the salt law that was imposed by the British. So Gandhiji reached Dandi and ceremonially he violated the law by manufacturing salt by boiling sea water. And this marked the beginning of a civil disobedience movement, my dears. And this act of Mahatma Ji, which was marked the beginning of a civil disobedience movement. What is civil disobedience movements? Disobedience to British laws. That is called civil disobedience movement. So the civil disobedience movement started with this act. What is that act? Okay, that is Dandi March or violating the Salt Act, violating the salt laws, which is the beginning of civil disobedience movement. Okay, my dears, and here is the picture of Sabarmati Ashram. So Mahatma Ji started his Dandi March from this ashram, and nearly he walked 240 miles from Sabarmati to Dandi. At last he reached Dandi and he picked up a handful of salt there at Dandi and violated the British salt law. Civil disobedience movements. People were asked as part of a civil disobedience movement. People were asked to break colonial laws. The colonial laws means the British laws were so hard, so they imposed a lot of laws upon Indians. So the Indians were unable to bear such laws. So as a part of civil disobedience movement here, Mahatma gave a call to all the people to break colonial laws. Okay, and here the people in India were asked to break colonial laws. The countrymen break the salt law. So throughout India, whenever Mahatma Ji started this salt satyagraha, Dandi March, so throughout India, people cleaved to that, and then they broke the salt law throughout India. And peasants refused to pay, as part of the civil disobedience movement, peasants refused to pay revenue tax to the British government. And some of the village officials resigned from their jobs. They quit their jobs. And the forest people, means the people who are living in the forest, the tribal people, the tribal mass, also had violated the forest rules and laws. Because in the beginning, in the last videos I told you, even the tribals were not permitted to enter the forests by the British. So all these laws now are violated by these tribals as part of civil disobedience movement. So forest people violated forest rules and laws. And not only that, women in large number also participated in the civil disobedience movement. And many went to jail, my dears. So here, so many, women, a large number of women, Sarojini Naidu and Lakshmi, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Sarojini Naidu, and many prominent women who followed Mahatma Gandhiji took part in this civil disobedience movement. So women in large number participated in the civil disobedience movement. As a result, many men and women were arrested by the British and were sent to jail. They were put in jail, my dears. A response of British rulers. The colonial government, the British government arrested more than 1 lakh people. And whenever the British government arrested this 1 lakh people, and this act of the British led to violent clashes in many places in our country. The British government arrested more than 1 lakh people, and this led to violent clashes. So the riots started, in many places. This led to violent clashes in many places. And Gandhiji was also arrested along with other volunteers and activists. Mahatma Ji was also arrested. So people began to attack police stations whenever Mahatma Ji was arrested and put in prison. And here in this picture you will see Mahatma Ji was put behind the bars, you see here. So whenever Mahatma Ji was arrested, so people began to attack police stations. And not only that, railway stations, municipal buildings, and courts, all these are the government properties. So whenever Mahatma Ji was arrested, so people began to attack police stations, railway stations, municipal buildings, and courts. And that was the response of the British, my dear. That means British government took all the repressive measures to suppress the civil disobedience movement, my dears. And later, and here is, take a look at this picture. It is the round table conference, okay? Yes, the British government invited Mahatma Ji to come and participate in the round table conference that was held in London, in Britain. Okay, now let me tell you about the round table. And here is just take a look at this picture. This is the view of the round table conference. So all our national leaders took part in Mahatma Ji, including Mahatma Ji, took part in the round table conference. When things began to take a violent turn, Gandhiji called of whenever the things began to take a violent turn, because the people, some of the, when Mahatma Ji was arrested, the people became angry, and then they attacked railway stations and government buildings, okay, courts and so on. They damaged all the public property. So whenever these things were happening, then immediately Mahatma Ji was discontent, and then Gandhiji immediately called off the movement, because he was quite against the violence. Yes, he was quite against the violence. So Mahatma Ji, whenever the things began to take a violent turn, and Gandhiji called off, okay, he called off, he stopped the movement. And then he signed a pact, an agreement was made, and he signed a pact with Viceroy Lord Irwin on March 5th, 1931. And this treaty was called Gandhi-Irwin Pact. It is Gandhi, my dear. It is typed mistakenly. It is Gandhi-Irwin Pact. As per this Gandhi-Irwin Pact, Gandhiji agreed to participate in the Round Table Conference in London. So the British government invited Mahatma Ji to come and participate in the Round Table Conference in London. So as per this act, as per this pact, means a treaty, as per this treaty that was concluded between Lord Irwin and Gandhiji, as per this pact and a treaty, Gandhiji agreed to participate in the Round Table Conference that was held in London. So instead of that, the government agreed, where Mahatma Ji agreed to attend the Round Table Conference, and reciprocally, the British government agreed to release the political prisoners. The British government agreed to release the political, when Mahatma Ji agreed to participate in the Round Table Conference, okay, as part of this agreement, British government also came forward, and it agreed to release the political prisoners who were arrested by the police during that moment. And then Gandhiji went to London in December 1931 to attend the Round Table Conference, and he attended it. He went to London, attended the meeting, Round Table Conference, and later the result was not fruitful, because the negotiations failed miserably. Okay, the negotiations, the talks failed, and Gandhiji returned to India with great disappointment and discontentment, because the negotiations failed there at the Round Table Conference. As a result, Mahatma Ji came back to India with a disappointment. And later, when he came to India, Gandhiji relaunched the civil disobedience movement. But by 1934, the movement had lost its momentum, my dear. By 1934, this civil disobedience movement had lost the support. It lost its luster. It lost its momentum. And as a result, okay, Mahatma Ji wanted to strengthen the movement, my dears. But by 1934, the movement had lost its momentum, its importance and significance. And all this come under, my dears, Round Table Conference, and Mahatma Ji's participation in the Round Table Conference. Okay, my dear children. And in the next video, I shall tell you about the people's participation in the national freedom movement and some more topics can be covered in the next video. Thank you, my dear children, for watching this video. And meanwhile, keep on reading the textbooks, and if you have any doubt, just call upon me and get your doubts clarified. Thank you very much for watching.